January 22nd, 1879. A dusty plain beneath the blazing African sun. Thousands of Zulu warriors wait silently in the tall grass, shields of cowhide, spears glinting in the light. Across the valley, British soldiers in bright red coats set up camp, confident, unaware. Within hours, nearly 1,300 British troops will be dead, their army wiped out by men armed mostly with spears. It was one of the most shocking defeats in the history of the British Empire, a moment when Victorian pride met African precision, and the myth of imperial invincibility shattered in a single afternoon. This is the story of the Battle of Isandlwana, a clash of arrogance, courage, and destiny. By the late 19th century, Britain's empire stretched across the globe, from India to Canada, from Australia to Africa. In southern Africa, the British sought to unite their colonies under one rule. But standing in their way was the Zulu Kingdom, a proud, disciplined nation founded by Shaka Zulu, whose warriors had once conquered much of the region. By 1879, the Zulus were ruled by King Cetshwayo, a strong, intelligent leader who wanted peace, but not submission. The British High Commissioner, Sir Bartle Frere, wanted the opposite. He saw the Zulu army as a threat and an excuse. He believed a quick victory would help justify British control over all of South Africa. So in December 1878, Frere sent Cetshwayo an ultimatum: disband your army and accept British authority, or face war. The demand was impossible. When the deadline expired, the British invaded. The invasion force was commanded by Lieutenant General Lord Chelmsford. He had over 17,000 men divided into 3 columns: British regulars, colonial volunteers, and African auxiliaries. Chelmsford's main column crossed into Zululand on January 11, 1879. Their destination? Ulundi, the Zulu capital. At first, everything went as planned. The red-coated troops marched in perfect order, dragging cannons, wagons, and supplies across the dry plains. But the British underestimated their enemy. Chelmsford believed the Zulus were primitive, brave perhaps, but undisciplined. He thought one good battle would break them. He was wrong. The Zulus, trained under Shaka's old system, were masters of speed, stealth, and coordination. They fought in a formation known as the Horns of the Buffalo, 2 flanking forces that encircled the enemy while the center held firm. Their regiments, or impi, moved with deadly precision, barefoot, silent, covering vast distances in hours. On January 20th, the British reached a flat-topped mountain called Isandlwana. They made camp, but not a proper fortified one. They didn't expect an attack. That mistake would cost them everything. The British camp sprawled beneath the strange, lion-shaped mountain of Isandlwana. Around 1,700 men guarded it, mostly soldiers of the 24th Regiment of Foot, a few hundred colonial troops, and local auxiliaries. Lord Chelmsford, hearing reports of Zulu movements nearby, decided to split his force. He took about half the army eastward to scout, leaving the camp under Colonel Henry Pillane, a capable but cautious officer trained for European warfare, not African terrain. He left orders: defend the camp, but be ready to move. Early on January 22nd, a small detachment under Colonel Anthony Durnford arrived from the south. Durnford was brave but impulsive, and soon confusion reigned. Reports came in: Zulu sightings on the hills. Pillane and Durnford argued, should they stay put or go out to engage? Meanwhile, 20,000 Zulu warriors were already on the move. Hidden in the valleys north of the camp, the Zulu army, over 20,000 strong, was resting and preparing to attack the next day. But when a British patrol stumbled upon them unexpectedly, the entire Zulu host surged forward. The warriors advanced in perfect formation. The center, known as the chest, charged straight ahead, while the horns swept wide to encircle. Their weapons were simple but deadly. The Ikalwa, a short stabbing spear, and the cowhide shield, light but strong. As the Zulus appeared over the ridges, the British opened fire with Martini Henry rifles, their volleys tearing gaps in the charging ranks. For a moment, it seemed the redcoats could hold, but the Zulu wave never stopped. They came in silence, then with a roar, a thunder of feet and voices that echoed off the hills. Colonel Durnford's men, on the right flank, fought bravely but were overwhelmed. The left flank was enveloped by the horns. Soon the British line was surrounded. They were too spread out, too exposed, and had no defensive position. No trenches, no wagons formed in a square, just men in the open, firing until their ammunition ran dry. As the Zulus pressed closer, the British line began to buckle. Officers shouted for ammunition, but the supply wagons were far to the rear, and the system for distributing rounds was chaotic. One survivor later said, "We fired until our rifles were too hot to hold, and then they were upon us." When the ammunition ran out, the battle turned into a massacre. The Zulus closed in hand-to-hand, stabbing with Ikalwa and clubbing with spears and knobkerries. The red line vanished in smoke and dust. Small groups tried to flee toward the river, but the horns closed behind them. The camp became a killing ground. Flags trampled, wagons overturned, men cut down one by one. A few survivors fought their way out through a nearby ravine, making a desperate run for Fugitives' Drift, a crossing point on the Buffalo River. Many drowned under the weight of their equipment. Others were speared midstream. Only a handful made it to the other side. By the time the sun set over Isandlwana, over 1,300 British and colonial troops lay dead. The Zulus had won a stunning victory, but at a terrible cost of their own, losing more than 1,000 warriors. It was the British Empire's greatest defeat ever inflicted by a native African army. When Lord Chelmsford returned that evening, he found the camp silent, strewn with bodies, broken rifles, and shattered wagons. The Zulus had already gone, taking what supplies they could carry. Chelmsford's army was shaken. The invincible British Empire had been humiliated. Across the world, newspapers were stunned. How, they asked, could an army armed with spears destroy one armed with rifles and cannon? The answer was simple: arrogance and ignorance. Chelmsford had underestimated the Zulus' discipline, and the British command had ignored basic precautions. But if Isandlwana was Britain's worst defeat, its revenge would be swift and merciless. Days later, a small garrison at Rorke's Drift, barely 150 men, held off thousands of Zulus in a desperate defense. That battle became a legend of British heroism, used to distract from the disaster at Isandlwana. By the end of 1879, British reinforcements, armed with Gatling guns and artillery, had crushed the Zulu Kingdom. King Cetshwayo was captured, and Zululand was annexed into the empire. The victory at Isandlwana had been glorious, but it could not stop the empire forever. The spears had beaten the rifles, but not the empire behind them. Isandlwana became a symbol, both of Zulu pride and British arrogance. For the Zulus, it was proof that courage and discipline could overcome modern weapons. For Britain, it was a harsh lesson in respect and in the limits of empire. One British survivor wrote later, "We were not beaten by savages. We were beaten by soldiers." Even today, the battlefield remains sacred ground. Visitors find the cairns, small white stone mounds, marking where each British soldier fell. And among the Zulus, the story is told not of savagery, but of unity, bravery, and the defense of their homeland. Now, some interesting facts. The Zulu army that fought at Isandlwana numbered around 20,000 men, organized into regiments by age and experience, the same system created by Shaka Zulu decades earlier. The average Zulu warrior could run over 30 kilometers in a day, barefoot, and still fight at full strength. Despite being armed mostly with spears, some Zulus carried captured rifles, though they lacked ammunition and training. The British camped without lagering, meaning they didn't circle their wagons or dig trenches, a fatal mistake in enemy territory. After the battle, Zulu warriors did not mutilate the British out of cruelty. They cut open the bodies so that the souls could escape, according to Zulu spiritual custom. The Battle of Isandlwana was fought on the same day as Rorke's Drift, just a few miles away, where a tiny British garrison made its famous stand. Isandlwana remains one of the worst defeats in British colonial history, rivaled only by the disasters at Kabul, 1842, and Khartoum, 1885. The Zulus' victory shocked Europe, inspiring both admiration and fear, and changing how imperial armies viewed native forces forever. The Battle of Isandlwana was not just a military disaster. It was a moment of truth. It showed that courage, unity, and discipline could stand against arrogance and empire, even if only for a single day. The Redcoats came with rifles and cannon. The Zulus came with spears and heart. And on that dusty African plain, the old world met the new, and for once, the empire fell silent. The Zulus won the battle, but the British won the war, and history remembers both, the victors and the vanquished. Thank you for watching this story, a story of courage, tragedy, and the day when spears defeated the empire. If you enjoyed this video and want to explore more forgotten battles, ancient wars, and moments that changed history, please leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the bell to stay updated. You can also check out my other videos, like the Battle of Cannae, the Falklands War, and the Warsaw Uprising, for more cinematic, easy-to-follow history. History is full of stories worth remembering. Let's make sure they're never forgotten. This was the Battle of Isandlwana, where courage met empire.